Hello, everyone. Lisa Starr here with another episode of StarrCast. And we have two very high-ranking ladies joining us today for a great discussion on what's happening in hotel spas. Obviously, the last 2 years have not been kind to most businesses, and hotel spas and hotels in general, hospitality in general, had a really tough time. And the hotel spas have typically been a little slower to come back, if you will. And many hotel spas and operators also are responsible for fitness, which also was really negatively impacted. So it has been a tough year for 2 years for spas in general, but extra so in the hotel segment. There are some good signs on the horizon, but I thought it would be really useful to talk to the horse's mouth, as it were, and have our two guests today. So we are joined by Jessica Shea, who is the Senior Director of Spa and Wellness for America's Operations for Hilton Worldwide, and Suzanne Holbrook, Senior Corporate Director of Spa Operations for Marriott Global, but also really focusing on the Americas, and 160 spas in the Americas for Suzanne and 30 plus a pipeline for Jessica. So welcome, both of you.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Nice to see you all today.
It's great to see you all. The three of us haven't been in the same room together in several years.
Well, I have to say, me and Jessica have seen each other quite a few times. We're very fortunate. We've seen each other quite a few times, which is one of my favorite parts, is going out and seeing fabulous people like Jessica.
Well, I've seen Jessica, but I don't think I've seen you. And I definitely know the three of us haven't been together. That will probably be remedied in May at iSpa.
I hope so. Absolutely.
Can't wait.
So go ahead, Jessica.
I was just going to say, I can't wait. It's going to be so wonderful to see everybody again.
I think everyone is so excited to go to an event and all be together and not wearing masks. How cool will that be?
Seeing smiling faces. It's so exciting.
Exactly. So the hotel spa. Both of you have many, many spas and employees under you. It's been a tough haul. Can we start by saying, where are you now in the continuum of crawling back or climbing back to 2019 figures? And Jessica, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. And thanks again for having me. I don't think we're crawling. I think we're going to, continue to be sort of let off a slingshot. It was obviously a very tough couple of years, but maybe the side benefit, I guess, if you will, of COVID was that it has truly pushed wellness to the forefront of consumer consciousness. And that is certainly reflective in what our guests are looking for in our hotels. It's been a leisure-led recovery, and obviously hotel spas have played a big part in that, especially in certain markets and in certain cities and resort locations, et cetera. So I am very hopeful that the future is bright and the rough road is behind us, because we see, extreme demand in the hotel spas at the moment. So we feel pretty strongly that trajectory is going to continue.
Great. And how about you, Suzanne? What's the Marriott outlook?
Yeah, really the same as Jessica said. I can be honest, since we probably a few months after the pandemic started, we opened in our states like Florida, Arizona, and it was completely full on. They are so crazy, and it's all leisure driven, as Jess said. And guests were stuck in the homes for a few months and were just looking to spend money to get out there and really make themselves feel better. I think, like Jess said, this pandemic has really driven our wellness focus, for the consumer, and they're really understanding they really have to look after themselves, and rather than buying a new car or some material thing, it's really about taking care of ourselves and our bodies. And so we continue to see that complete craziness, and it's a good craziness. It's a good problem to have. We really sort of see the Florida, the Arizonas, the Texas. Our slower markets have been California and Hawaii. We still have restrictions, even in Canada, in Toronto, certain areas there. We still are seeing restrictions. They cannot do facials.
Really? Where can't they do facials?
So Toronto is one of our areas.
Wow, and we're recording this in March, so that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's been quite a challenge for us. And globally, we actually, and I hate to be the bringer of bad news, but we're just in Hong Kong closing back down again. Because they have the Omicron. But the the only good thing about that, and this is my only personal view, is that this is like herd immunity, and maybe we just can move through this and continue to see the drive that we have seen in the last 18 months. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think because of this difference, because of this shift and this change, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity.
So your bounce back, you were saying, was more in the south of the U.S. first, which is understandable, less restrictions there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Florida, we just saw absolutely, and especially hotels or spas with a large local community, that just increased double. So that local, I would say probably like a Ritz-Carlton in Orlando was probably at about 40-50% local guests. They literally went to about 80%. Because the hotels, when we first opened, the hotels weren't really. They were seeing like a 5 to 10% occupancy in the hotels. But the spas were at 100%.
Unbelievable.
Beyond busy, without the staffing. So it's been pretty incredible.
Well, it's a good time then for spa and wellness to get the attention of your GMs, right? Jessica, what about your return to 2019 levels? What is it looking like for you in the Americas?
Very similar to what Suzanne said, especially in our drive-to destinations, our resort markets, places with heavy local bases are exceeding 2019 levels in terms of demand. Obviously, across the board, I think some of us are facing challenges with staffing. So I would say that is the one thing that may prevent some spas from reaching 2019 levels, even with the demand there, is being able to facilitate supply on that demand. So I think that's, pretty much the greatest challenge we're facing, but certainly people want, as Suzanne said, people want to get out. There's pent up desire to travel. There's pent up desire to take care of ourselves, to treat ourselves, to be touched. So all of those things have really, really positively impacted the spas.
Yes, it has been really held back just by staffing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's something we have to talk about. I mean, hospitality, restaurants, retail, globally, we don't have enough staff. I don't know anyone that would say they don't have a need to hire people tomorrow. Would you say the same in your facilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica's absolutely spot on. I think probably the loss of revenue that we're seeing in our spas is probably quite incredible. We're still seeing spas that are not open fully. So, they might only be open from 10 till 6, which it's a pet peeve of mine. I always prefer to get a massage in the evening. We just don't have the staffing to do it. There's some spas that still only are open 5 days a week. But I think this will continue to be a challenge, especially as we see Walmart and Starbucks and all these other different offerings offering much higher hourly rates.
Crazy hourly pay rates.
It's crazy. So we now have to compete in that market. So you look at a Florida market that may pay $8 an hour. We now have to try and increase that almost double. So that has a huge impact on an industry. The spa industry has a limited profit margin because of the high manual cost of running our businesses. So I think that continues to be a challenge. And it's not just our therapists. We have to have the therapists to make that revenue. They're the revenue driver. But we're also seeing a great challenge on front desks and lockers, especially in that front desk, because these entry-level associates are moving. They're like, I'll go work at Starbucks for $15 an hour and I can get benefits. I can work part-time at Starbucks, $15 an hour. So I think we will continue to see that challenge. I think it's going to be across every industry. But I would probably say if me and Jessica put our numbers together on how much revenue we lost in the last year just by turning away treatments, it's probably astronomical.
It's probably a number you don't want to know.
It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. It's terrible. But I think there is other ways around that. So there are other ways that we found ways around that, which we can talk about later.
Yes, we will want to talk about that. I just wanted to ask Jessica if she's experienced the same, but I'm sure the answer is yes.
Sure, absolutely. And I emphasize Suzanne's point about our support staff, receptionists, spa attendants. In many locations, actually, that is more of a challenge than even service providers. So it's certainly something we have to get creative to solve for.
Yes. So I want to come back to what we're doing about that, but let's talk for the moment about the immediate product being offered in terms of what your menu looks like, the equipment you've got, the pricing? I mean, have either of you seen wholesale changes to that in your companies?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think COVID, the pandemic sort of kicked it off in terms of we were forced to streamline our offering, and also move it to more of a digital format when we were presenting it to guests, to go more touchless.
Right. So Jessica, your menus were like QR codes or something, and not just like in the restaurant now, you have to take your phone to dinner with you.
Exactly. So ironically, I believe that was something we needed to do. And it was sort of a kickstart to modernizing some of our treatment menus. I think gone are the days of pages and pages that we think your average consumer is going to have the time or patience to thumb through. And so this idea of a more streamlined, impactful offering, digitally presented, which presents flexibility, both in pricing and offerings, is thankfully here to stay. I think it's forced our business to be a bit more agile. I will be the first to admit, I think we were stuck in the dark ages with some of that. And so I think it opens up all kinds of opportunity to shift and shape with consumer needs and demand, understand that wellness is evolving quickly, and we need to evolve with it. And that's both from a pricing and a programming perspective.
And Suzanne, you're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Jessica. It's I think that menu engineering piece is so much easier when it's digital. And we've really focused on yield management this year, since we've really been able to, because we have this really high demand. We have a lack of staffing. We don't have the treatments to offer. So like the airlines, like the hotels, we've really moved over to yield management. So we've developed a sort of a comprehensive training program where we can change that menu online. So everything flows digitally, even though you may have booked your treatment 2 weeks before and you will get it at that price. But if you come in that day, we know our demand is incredibly high that day. That treatment may be $30 higher than it was 2 weeks before when you booked it, when somebody else booked it. So you may be sitting next to someone, but that's no different from the airlines. And
No.
I think we have to get used to it. I think people are scared of yield management. Even in our company, people are a little scared of yield management, but you have to make sure that your I's and your T's are crossed, and you have all your menu engineering in place, and you have your process and your training. And then I really believe that's what some of the reasons we've done so incredibly well with our revenue is because we really have been able to manage that yield management.
Well, it's a classic supply and demand challenge, right? We have a limited supply of something that is made by reservation. It's got a big demand. It's ripe for some sort of revenue management. And yet hotels, spas, even hotel spas in particular, were hesitant to do that. Outside of Vegas, I didn't see it very often. We saw Vegas start doing it a number of years ago for the weekends at certain locations, but a hotel that does it every day with rooms just wasn't doing it on the spa side. So I think that we've all talked about the need for that. And this is maybe another COVID silver lining, is that, you've realized that you can do it. Let's talk about how that works in reality. Do either of you give parameters to a facility on what the yields should be, or what their range of pricing options should be?
I mean, obviously it's very market dependent and very spa dependent on their business levels and their group base, or whatever the certain situation may be. So we give overarching guidance on the things to look for and the philosophy, and working closely with the hotel's revenue manager or management team, because that's certainly their area of expertise. So we give that kind of guidance, and then really trust the hotels to make sure they're dynamically pricing based on their specific location.
How about for you, Suzanne?
I would agree. I think it's about menu engineering and dynamic availability. So we've recommended our teams to really go and go through their data, identify the treatments that are most, that are selling the most according to the volume of sales, and you could identify 4 types. So we sort of identify as our stars. One would be our stars, which would be a high demand and high margin. Then there would be other treatments that would be costly. They've got strong demand but low margin. Then you've got your low demand and high margins, and the low demand and low margins. So you really look at the stars, which are your strong demand and high margins. So they're the ones we really focus on. Is really how do we comprehensively build out a program so it's easy to follow, so there's guidance. And I think spas have for many years done the weekend. We've done that for many years. And I think when we talk about yield management, I think people easily just fall back into, well, we do yield management. It's different pricing in the week, different pricing at the weekend. We've done that for many, many years. I think when we talk about yield management now, it's about changing your prices on an hourly basis. How do you really manage that piece? What prices do you change? How do you menu engineer them dynamic pricing? So you really have to, as you say, get your ducks in a row and make sure you go through your previous data to ensure that data is correct. And you take off your menu on a Saturday, you take off those low margin treatments. You don't want to. If we've only got 1 hour to sell, we want to sell the treatments got the highest price with the highest profit margin. So it's really being able to go in and identify those different
Well, I was glad to see you mention dynamic availability, because dynamic pricing is something we have played with, but the availability side, whereas we might limit 30-minute treatments not available on the weekend, no singles in a couple's room, et cetera, we were less efficient at doing that. And so I think now what I'm hearing is that's an approach you're also taking.
Absolutely.
Jessica, you too?
Yes, 100%.
So we are using dynamic availability and dynamic pricing, but what about the base offerings? I mean, how are they changing, if at all, like from the breadth of vendors offered and types of treatments? Have you done menu engineering to that extent as well?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. I mean, we know historically when we were operating previously, about 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the treatments. And
the classic rule.
The classic rule. And there is about 10 treatments globally that whomever you survey, whenever you survey, they are the top 10 treatments. And that's what drives the demand. On the flip side, you have a much more, I would say, wellness aware consumer, often some who are looking for a little bit more, but that core 10 is probably not going to move all that much. So I think the sweet spot we find is focusing on those core treatments, but infusing elements of wellness, of holistic wellness that allow a guest to dip their toe into wellness or a more holistic experience, I would say, and then opens the door for them to maybe try something a little bit, outside their comfort zone. And that element of wellness, I would say right now falls under kind of two categories, either something that's a little bit more spiritually meaningful. So they walk out of that treatment with more of a, wow, that impacted my spirit, body, mind. It was more of an all over feeling that stays with them. Or it's a little bit more results and technology driven. So it's kind of one way or the other. And that is largely based on the location, the market, the type of spa. But we've really been focused on making sure those differentiators, those sort of holistic wellness touches are much more a part of your more traditional treatment experience.
Why? What's the advantage of doing that?
I think people are looking for it. I don't think you can just do traditional kind of more basic or classic massage and step out and stand out anymore, because there's so many choices out there. And so for the hotel spa guest who's looking for a little extra, but doesn't want to maybe book a craniosacral 1 hour treatment, you could bring a little bit of energy work into a more traditional massage, and they might not even know what happened, but they walked out saying, wow. So it elevates the experience. And for those who are more savvy, they understand a little bit of what you're doing, and it opens the door to say, I really enjoyed that 5 minutes of Reiki that ended my session. I see that. Do you offer that for an hour? Could I come back for that? Or I use as an example, the Arizona Biltmore, we've brought kind of an astrology spin on some of the treatments and the products that we use in treatments that guests really love. Sort of your guests who may not have been open to that before, there's a little taste of it in a more traditional treatment, but then they come back and book a one-on-one session with the astrologer. And I think that's a great example of where we see that kind of spectrum of experience going.
That's an excellent example, Jessica. It's a great way to leverage that existing appointment into something new? Because consumers say they want it, but are they booking them? What are you seeing at Marriott Spa, Suzanne?
Yeah, I agree with Jessica. Exactly the same. 75% of our business will be massage. It will always be touch massage, and that's ultimately what's going to drive the business. But I think offering people additional options that they are not aware of is always a great opportunity for our spas. So, like Jessica said, while you're doing a massage, can you offer them LED? Can you, can you offer them a certain amount of meditation? Are there wellness offerings that you can implement or sprinkle into that treatment? Because ultimately that's what they're going to come for. And I think, so with massage, it's 75% of our business, but I never try to get too far away from the facials either, because facials do not bring us the revenue that a massage in, but that's really where our retail comes from.
Right, exactly. And your average ticket is much higher generally.
So much higher. So I think for spa leaders or spa owners, never get too far away from your facials, because that really can drive up your revenue from your retail perspective. But I like Jessica. I think it's more wellness is going out there. I think we are going to see more of it, and I think it will be a lot of technology. But I don't think we can ever discount the ancient. We talk about astrology. If I come into your spa, Jess, I would buy the additional astrology. I would totally give me some tarot card reading on top and a few other things, and I'm absolutely there. So, I think it's finding options that our guests want to add on top of the traditional treatment, and options that they do not know that are there.
Well, it is a great opportunity to expose them to these things that were maybe considered, woo-woo at one time, and especially in a hotel spa. You didn't often see cutting edge spiritual options on the menu. So I'm really glad you're finding a way to work those in, because to Jessica's point, people want wellness. They certainly want it more than they ever did. Do either of you have challenges finding practitioners who are able to sort of flex with these new demands?
No, I think largely no. I think it's more about partnering with local wellness practitioners that are in your community. And I think that that's a really great way for hotel spas to have another avenue to connect with the community, to be honest. And in some cases, it's somebody that we might have in-house and on full time in the right markets, but largely it's somebody that we would probably have a partnership with, that is an expert in that field, that we can have, to service guests or to come in and do those trainings on those sort of sprinkled in elements Suzanne mentioned, and then, set up for one-on-one appointments. I think that if you expand your model of how you work with those folks, it can be really positive.
Suzanne, for you, any challenges with finding holistic practitioners?
No, I agree with Jess. You already have them in your spas. I'm not a believer in making everyone do every single treatment on the menu. And we get asked that question quite often from our spa leaders.
Should all people like in aesthetics do all the aesthetic treatments?
Yeah, or should they all do energy work? I don't believe they should. I think with energy work in massage, I think that's a specialized. It's in you. It's whether you're practiced in that or you just have it within your DNA. So I don't think you have to force everyone to do everything. There are certain treatments that we do require everyone. Waxing, everyone has to do it. We don't mind doing it.
All body parts, by the way.
If you're a hairdresser, you've got to do hair cutting. There are certain things you have to do. But I think with them specialized treatments, we just rolled out to the Ritz-Carlton, of our Ritz-Carlton concept, a whole wellness program with Spa. And it's a relatively simple concept. Everyone can do, but we don't push everyone to do it. We just say, if you really feel this and you feel this is something you really would like to give to your guests, we're finding great success with it.
Well, Jessica, you brought up a great point of involving the community. In your hotel spas, how many of them have membership plans just as a percentage, and how do you leverage that?
It'd be hard to cite a percentage off the top of my head. I know, quite a few do. I think that it's an important component in certain locations. Obviously, the ones that have the space, that's a big consideration, because certainly in the fitness center, we want the priority to go to our hotel guests. So if we have the space to accommodate a membership, we certainly want to build one. I think one of the key aspects of that is that there's a lot of competition out there to go to a gym. So if it's a hotel membership, it has to be more comprehensive and feel more like its own kind of club or community within the hotel for the local guest. And it should include things like spa and food and beverage and pool and parking and dry cleaner or whatever. But I think, again, to differentiate from 24-hour fitness, it's that guest that's looking for something a little bit more elevated and more holistic. And that's where we really try to focus our energy, is not so much on the quantity of maybe fitness memberships we roll out or have in the collection, but the quality of those sort of kind of higher end, comprehensive, more club-like feel memberships.
Suzanne, what's happening on your side?
Yeah, same as Jess. We actually built out a few years ago a membership toolbox, because I think it really is based on the demographic, on the spa, and we see a few different types of memberships. Our Ritz-Carlton in Naples has this incredible membership. They have their own locker rooms. I can tell you the memberships are hugely expensive. I think it's a $60,000 initiation fee alone.
What?
And it's incredible. So it really does.
That pays for them having their own locker room.
They do. They've had to build out that locker room because they have a waiting list. So we have to continue building out that locker room. So and that doesn't happen everywhere. So we have another location, the Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island, that put we built out like a spa envy. I say that word, a spa envy type of membership, an elevator spa envy type of membership, where you would receive a treatment each month. So within your membership, you'd be able to use the spa, the spa pool, and things like that. You would receive a treatment every month at a much lower price. And actually that's been really, really successful for us. And then I see, I think from an ownership perspective, I can visit some of our properties where I know a membership would probably make multiple $1 million, and we can't get the owners to change it because they don't have enough locker room space. So, how do we open up that space, and how do we say to our owners, there's millions of dollars, and a lot of that's profit with membership. A lot of that right now.
Right. You have the facility. It's a sunk cost already.
Just figure it out, so it's really convincing. So I think there is, and I think even in this time and age with the pandemic, I think membership is going to have more of a drive.
Well, it's funny, as you mentioned the envy word. I mean, when spas around the world saw what was happening with those models, they all said, oh, we want a membership program. And I mean, you don't have 800, 900, 1,000 units like some of these big ones do now. But the idea of a continuous stream of income, of course, is appealing. But they don't always have a lot to offer beyond that. I mean, in a hotel spa, you've got pools and beautiful facilities and lounges and fitness and, all kind of F&B that you can include in that membership to make it more appealing. I would think it would be hugely successful, especially in some of these fancy locations, as both of you are in. I just recently, this week, there was a story about a Kimpton in Omaha, Nebraska, starting a wellness sort of social membership, because they see that places like Soho House are being built everywhere, and people want to belong to something. Do you think that that's part of it, that the sense of belonging that people want in their community?
I think so. And I think it's rallying around health and well-being and fitness versus golf, and not, some places have golf, but other types of memberships like that may be built around something else. And I think, again, as individuals appreciate wellness more, coming together as a community that appreciates well-being and wellness more is going to continue to grow too. And I think that's why we're seeing this uptick in demand for memberships like that.
And I also think, and I agree with, I think that wellness piece is really important. Myself and Kenneth had just been to Cancun a few months ago, and we visited, we've recently acquired a lot of all-inclusive hotels. So when you go down to Mexico, a lot of their spas are all-inclusive, and they have these great hydrotherapy circuits, which and you'll see them in Europe. You see them, I know, when I go to Europe, you see them a lot. And it really hasn't been a hit in the States. Not since I've been here 25 years, and I've never really seen that a big thing. But I think we will start seeing that. So when we're designing our spas or renovating our spas, we're going in and saying, listen, build out these incredible hydrotherapy, like the Well in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Go out, but because you cannot get an appointment in that place. It's so busy. So build out a hydrotherapy circuit that isn't necessarily included in the price of your treatment. So if you're booking a massage, you would pay for this hydrotherapy circuit. So it'd be like a wellness center. You pay for this on top. I think there's huge growth there. If we as Americans continue to understand this wellness piece and how important it is to us, I think that hydrotherapy circuit and wellness centers would be a great addition to the memberships.
I recently visited the Awana Spa in Vegas, where they have the new event sauna, and it is adjacent to a series of thermal pools of different temperatures and heated loungers and, caldarium and all of that. And there's a fee for that in addition. And you can have a spa treatment over a certain amount and it's included, or you buy a day pass and you just experience that. So to that point, Suzanne, I think, yes, you need to charge more for some of these things because they're hugely expensive, especially thermal facilities to install and operate, but they are something that you can't get next door.
Yeah, and they would be, what we saw in Mexico was that was probably one of the biggest parts of the revenue. And you would book 2 hours. You wouldn't just be, at the moment we can go and use our spas, we use the sauna and steam and, the whirlpools, and that's all included. You can go all day. This was based on time because these places there was high demand. It was really, really very difficult to get in there. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes us, because that, again, with our staffing opportunities, that would relieve some of our staffing opportunities while driving the bottom line profit, because that brings a much higher profit margin than a massage does or a facial does.
So you were seeing them sell access, but for a limited time, not the whole day.
Yes.
Like, how do you manage that? Do they have a wristband or a stamp ticket? I mean, how do you?
They must have like a buzzer, it zaps you as soon as your time's
up. Your time's up, get going.
Yeah, but they must have, I guess if you're making great revenue in the marriage, you would staff it and you would have to put a process in place. But that is a good question.
Well, and to your point about staffing, we certainly need to look at these offers that we can have that give people wellness, but aren't driven by a direct therapist one-on-one with the guest relationship. How do you see that going forward in hotel spas? Or is it, again, going to be an issue of by location and brand?
I think Suzanne makes a great point about hydrotherapy, because I believe that there is always going to be a high demand for touch therapy. And that is going to be the primary driver of the spa business. And it's going to be what guests want when they come to a spa largely. I think a lot of the technology out there that is touchless is really interesting and can be a component of the experience, but I personally don't believe it's ever going to replace the experience. I think we need to look for complementary experience to touch. And I think hydrotherapy is a great one because people really like it. And they already are familiar with it. I mean, maybe not to the scale that they are in Europe or in, Mexico, but I think people just like being in a jacuzzi or in a hot tub in general. And it offers a social component and a social experience beyond a treatment experience. So I think that those complementary experiences that are more quote unquote touchless, we need to focus on while continuing to understand that the touch part of our business is the driver.
Well, and to your point, Jessica, nobody needs to be shown how to get in the hot tub. Like, we don't need an interface with the staff for that. Every consumer knows how to get in a hot tub. So, but there are some newer like LED treatments or flotation or cryotherapy touchless where you do need to have someone, maybe not a licensed therapist, but somebody sort of shepherding you through that experience. I actually published a podcast about 3 weeks ago on touchless therapies and the interviewed 2 operators to say how they were working and what were the challenges. And, same thing. It's not to replace what we're doing. That's been the whole outcry all along. No, we're not getting rid of what we have, but we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but we need other options. given the demand we're seeing is unprecedented and we don't have enough staff to fill it, it's sort of a logical conclusion, right? Like, okay, I have space, I have demand. What can I do that doesn't require a direct therapist intervention, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think there are options out there. We've been looking. I don't really, if you have a small spa, you never want to give up a treatment room. Your massage is always going to be your biggest revenue driver in that treatment room. But there are so many great chairs, meditation chairs out there that you could probably add to your lounge. You could upgrade, you could add LED. There's LED that wouldn't affect anyone around you. There's many different, there's meditation pods, I think high price, or someone came out with a meditation ball. So I think there are ways that you can upgrade even in your lounges. And I think so you're not using your revenue space. You're using a space that isn't producing any revenue.
Right.
And you have to figure out how to make sure it doesn't affect the people around them. And as we design spas, we always try to do a social section, and then we try to do a private section where there's shears between each bed. And that's such a great opportunity for a locker attendant to have that education, to go up and offer LED or offer meditation or offer all these different components of wellness. But, coming back to the hydrotherapy question, in these hydrotherapy centers, I think that should be a journey also. I don't think it should just be left down to the guests as it is I think there should be a journey where I don't think we always educate our guests on the benefits and health benefits of hydrotherapy. So I think we do have opportunity to say there, right, this is the way you use hydrotherapy, and this is the journey that goes along with it. So I think there's a great deal of ways that we can add wellness and those health benefits without taking up our treatment rooms.
Well, I totally agree with that on the hydrotherapy, especially when there's more than one element. When there's a hot tub, we know how to get in the hot tub, but when there's contrast therapy involved, your average guest has no clue how to do that. We're not trained like guests in Europe who grew up with that. So it's so helpful when there's just a chart on the wall or something that says, start your journey here and spend this much time and this much time, and make sure, of course, you have the timers in the saunas so that becomes easy or easier for the guest to do. Jessica, have you instituted any touchless therapies in any of your Hilton spas?
Actually, we're really working on an exciting project. We'll be opening a Conrad Spa in Los Angeles in May, and we've been very much focused on recovery cabins. So, of course, we have,
I love the sound of that.
We have traditional therapies, massage, but also it's a little bit more innovative. And at being LA, we wanted it to be sort of forward thinking when it comes to the offering. And for example, we'll have a jet peel for facials. But when it comes to more touchless, we will have the Guarini sound wave chair to do treatments on. In the recovery cabins, we have more of a layering opportunity where you can have the PEMF mat for frequency, the NuCalm for mental wellness, different sort of technologies where you can be in this cabin to use them and for recovery. It could be a 20-minute session, or it could be a 2-hour nap, booked by time and booked by different modalities that you want to layer on to have more of that holistic experience. So we're really, really excited about that. And just side note on the hydrotherapy, I recall I was in Europe quite a few years ago, and I think it was Starr maybe, who they have many different hydrotherapy units and really believed in the circuit and the contrast bathing. And they had created you remember the traditional slap bracelets, like there, they had a slap bracelet that had all the different, like what you did throughout the circuit on it. And
that's great.
Slap it on your wrist and it was waterproof, but then you could pull it out like a little guide. And I thought it was genius. And I'm dying to replicate it somewhere someday, but I agree. I think letting people know how to do it is really important without overcomplicating it. So I always look at that.
I love that.
Oh, I know, right? And waterproof to boot. So I love the recovery cabin idea and that whole idea of recovery. I mean, we're seeing that is how they're marketing cryotherapy and Normatec and PEMF, et cetera. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next year how those technologies get incorporated. Suzanne, you mentioned design, and I'd like to talk about that for a minute. We had a lot of webinars in 2020 about oh, what's going to happen? And we're going to have all our treatments outside now in fresh air. And, long term, have either of you seen major design changes based on COVID, or maybe as a result of things you already wanted to do and this was a good reason? What's the development pipeline showing us?
I probably think it has had an impact on the future of design, and possibly we may add more outside spaces. But so I always find it very tough. You're very weather reliant, on outdoor spaces. That's the problem. So I think there's always ways that we can do that. But I think the design is definitely more. I think technology will definitely continue to make an impact on how we design spas moving forward. Is it contactless check-in? I think there may be lots of ways that people want to work through technology. I'm older, so I'm always like, I always want to feel that I'm connecting with someone at that front desk, but there's a lot of people that don't. So are there ways that you can go straight through to your experience and without having to check in? I think that the social side of our business will continue to always be a big part of it. Women's, like Jess said, instead of going to a nightclub for your bachelorette party, now people are coming to spas. So how do we really create and design the floor plans where you can turn it into an individual room for groups, but then you can really open it up into a social setting and really create these very, very social spaces, but keep people really private as well. So I think technology is really going to help us with that as we move forward. But I think it's going to be interesting. And again, the hydrotherapy piece and wellness centers. How do we build out that membership? How do we build out wellness centers that are really aligned with our spas, but separated from our spas so they're optional? So I think that's where we see design going.
All right. Jessica, what are you seeing at Hilton?
I would agree. And I would add to the technology piece, smart technology in the hydrotherapy circuits. So, that they're turning on and off. There's a lot of ways to look at our environmental impact and reduce emissions with smarter technology now for how those are operating. The heating elements, the saunas, we don't necessarily need to rely on a person to turn those on and off at night anymore. They can turn on automatically when somebody walks in, that kind of thing. I think that's really important to the future of spa design. And I think, to Suzanne's point about, bringing in natural elements, it is hard sometimes to play around weather. And so biophilia and bringing the outdoors in, I mean, we've been banging that drum for a long time, but I feel like it's really being embraced. And I always joke that whenever I go to a hotel, I'm always so used to pushing the down button to get to the spa in the elevator. Like, to me, spas were always built in the basement for some reason, and we really see that changing. And natural light being brought in, fresher experiences, especially in reception and retail and salon, and then an evolution of light and space as you get to the more quiet places. So I think there's a lot more thoughtfulness going into the all-around sensorial experience of that guest, which is really exciting to see.
Well, and it's important that we do touch all of the senses. And you're correct. Hotel spas were always in some corner of the basement. And it was exciting to see when the Four Seasons Philadelphia opened here where I live. It's on the 56th floor. And the treatment room has windows that are floor to ceiling, and you don't need to close the curtains because no one can see in unless they went by in a helicopter, right? So it's that idea of light and air and not being tucked away. What about natural air, and airflow? Have either of you seen elements of that and started to be included in designs?
Yeah, certainly you look at Delos, the company out there, Delos, they really talk about that natural light in the circadian rhythms, and then the airflow. And I like what you're saying about the cabins, Jessica, because I just actually spoke with someone the other week that is actually designing a cabin. It's really, you literally even just put into the spa, and it's all really based on clean airflow, on the natural lighting, on meditation. It's a bed and it's a cabin, and you can go in there, you can do treatments, or you can just do meditation. So it really is built around that natural airflow. I think one of my pet peeves as a spa person is when I walk into a spa or even a hotel, and you have something going through that. We have air conditioning units everywhere, and you have that synthetic smell coming through your air conditioning even. How do we even change that and have natural aromatherapy coming through? And there's plenty of companies out there that do it. But, how do we really not just teach our spas how to be wellness driven, but how do we start the journey from before they even get into the hotel? So then we'll walk through the lobby, and it's the lighting's wellness driven. The airflow is, from a wellness perspective. So how do we change the whole journey? Because sometimes it seems a little bit cliche when you go through the hotel and it's, you've got pink sugar in the sugar bowls, which is always a really big pet peeve of mine, and everything is very synthetic, and then you get to the spa and it's very different. How do we change the whole journey?
Yeah, I think to that point, when you asked about design, I think finally our day has come where wellness is being thought about much more holistically in hotel design and hotel experience, and the holistic experience to the guests. And even in big companies like ours, I'm sure Suzanne sees it too. It's really encouraging that HVAC systems, not just in the spa, but in the whole place, and lighting and all of that is, we have wonderful designers who've always maybe felt it passionately, and now it's really becoming more of a priority for owners as well, to make sure that well-being, that feeling of well-being is as simple as noise, light, air quality, all of those things. I always say, why are we going to put money building a wellness room in a hotel that has no soundproofing and an old HVAC system and a thermostat that might not work? We have to get the basics correct in that experience, and then add in all of those other elements. And I think there's a lot more understanding and focus on that, which is really exciting.
Oh, I agree. It's so true what you say about, we're doing it in this room, but it really has to be the whole facility. And maybe as a brand pillar isn't built around wellness, but the facilities that just do provide superlative experiences, especially in Europe. If you ever go to a Le Fay or a Lanzerhof or Shaw, places that were built from the ground up around wellness, you do get a different experience, and you're willing to pay more for that. We're seeing that most guests are. Now, that's not to say you can trot that out at every Marriott or Hilton across the world, but it's a thing to consider. Wellness architecture. I mean, who knew that was a discipline, until a few years ago? And yet there's all these people that work on nothing but design that's sensible and uses earth elements and fresh air and natural light and all of those things that we seek to be well.
Yeah, and Lisa, I agree. I think we need to build our spas or our hotels around wellness instead of building our hotels and spas and then trying to force wellness into them. We need to start with that wellness architecture. You said it needs to be built. It needs to be built with that in mind, with that concept in mind.
Well, the spa can't be a bolt-on wellness piece, right? It needs to be.
It very often is, unfortunately.
Yes, that's true. It just needs to be integrated. And some of our brands have done it better than others. But, well, I think the future is bright. I think that it sounds like revenues are good. I was listening to Jan Freitag from CoStar with his February report, and particularly in the luxury segment, that occupancy levels were down 24% from 2019 still, and yet ADR was up 30%. Like tremendous pricing power right now that seems to be drifting over to the spa and wellness side too, judging from what I've heard from both of you. Any last words for the future on what the hotel spa experience will be like in the next few years for guests?
Well, I would just sort of add on to what you said about occupancies. I think obviously we know that lag in occupancy is largely due to group, especially in, hotels like Hilton and Marriott, but that's coming back too. And we're starting to see it come back. And it's once that group experience comes back to hotels and we have this leisure demand, it's going to be kind of off the charts in terms of what's happening in the hotels. I think this summer is going to be a huge summer for everybody. And I think we just need to sort of buckle up and be ready for this wave, because it kind of feels like some of our spas I know feel like they're drinking from a fire hose now, but I think it's going to continue to grow, and we need to really be solution oriented for the staffing challenges and the support challenges, and also recognize that pricing isn't the only only game in town, right? If you don't have the value there and the guest doesn't have the experience, we cannot continue to just increase prices for the sake of price increases. So I think everybody has to be really conscious of that, because our consumers are more focused on wellness. They're smarter when it comes to their experiences. Their expectations are growing. So this is a very great, tide to be riding, but we need to be very conscious of experience and how we continue to deliver on what guests want when they come to the hotel spa.
Suzanne, any comments?
Totally aligned with Jessica. I absolutely agree. We can, our ADR, we can definitely increase, we can definitely yield manage, but there has to be that value. So if we're paying $30, $40 more, $50 more for a treatment, that value has to really be aligned with that. We can't close our locker rooms. We can't walk into our lounges and there's a bowl of peanuts on the side. It's just a huge pet peeve of mine. Charge me $250 a treatment, but make sure my value, I walk away going, well, that was worth every single penny. Because the whole experience from the beginning of that journey to the end of that journey was incredible and above and beyond. So, and I think we have to be careful about that moving forward. I think the staffing issue will continue to be a little bit of a challenge for us, and leadership. I think we have to find ways to support our spas, and we found that with the pandemic that a lot of leadership positions were eliminated. We have to find a way to put them back in, because I believe there is burnout with our leaders, and I don't want to end up on a bad note. So how do we, and it's solution, we have to find solutions. If that business is out there, it is, hang on to your seats. I think it's going to be an incredibly busy year. We just need to make sure we've got the infrastructure in place to support our teams and our leaders and our guests. We'll bring the money. We'll just need all the other things.
No, I see Jessica nodding too. We do have a lot of burned out spa directors who've been working the desk and, cleaning the bathrooms in addition to their regular job. And that's not really sustainable. And that's not wellness either. Well, let's cross our fingers that all the pieces come together. It looks like a bright future for hotel spas and spas in general, and hotels can really capitalize on this wellness interest by the great facilities that they offer and experiences. Thank you again, Suzanne Holbrook and Jessica Shea, for joining us today. I know you're so busy, and I was lucky to get both of you at the same time, a bit of a miracle, but thank you again for your contributions, and I look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon.
Thank you for asking us, Lisa. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
It's always fun.
My pleasure. Thank you.